Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to Modern and Modest. With me today we have a very interesting guest, someone that gives off so much to community, and this wonderful individual's name is Sabira Timol. Assalamu alaikum Sabira, and welcome to Modern and Modest.
Walaikum salam, and I think I should thank all of you for having me on your show this morning, and let's hope I offer some kind of add value to the program, and also be able to explain the kind of work that we do at our center.
So Sabira, just coming back to what you do, I know you've been involved in a lot of community work and giving to people, very giving personality. And you've been involved in a respite center for a few years now. But before we get into detail about the respite center, can you perhaps share with our viewers as to what a respite center is?
Yes, a lot of people are unaware of what a respite center offers. Respite is where it's a short-term stay in facility. And we offer the main, focus of our work is psychosocial services. And a respite center is there to offer women, especially women who are in a crisis situation, who are in a violent relationship, be it with their spouses, with their children, with the family members, and they need the help to be able to build up their self-confidence and self-worth to get out of that situation, or to change their behavior so that the environment around them will also be more conducive to living a healthy life, a happy life, a life that's filled with self-satisfaction as well. Because a lot of people give off everything they have, and they find that there is no self-fulfillment. So at a respite center, where a person would come in, and this is the kind of help we would give them.
You mentioned the respite center is for a short stay. Would you be able to share as to, like, when you say short stay, what would you be referring to? How long can a person stay with you at your center?
Yes, a person can be with us for a week, a few days, up to 6 months. Okay. We offer them the accommodation, we offer them, all the services that we provide at the center, which we will discuss a little later. And in order to just create a safe space for them, a safe space which offers care, which offers love, and which offers respect. And that is what people generally want. People want that because when you come to a stage in your life where you feel this is the end, it's hopeless, I can't do anything, you need to get out there and you need to get that help. So at the respite center, that's the focus, and this is what we hope to achieve for every woman that steps through our doors.
So would you say, how have you identified that there was a need for the respite center here in Durban?
Okay, many years ago, let's say at least about 12 years ago, a group of volunteers and professional members of the community, we got together and we discussed, that women, especially Muslim women, have nowhere to go when there is a crisis situation within the home, where there is a matter of life and death, where a woman is badly beaten. She is made to feel that that's her rightful place is in a home. No, it doesn't matter what she's experiencing. So we felt that no, although providing counseling, like a walk-in counseling or day counseling, we call it, where they would come in, they would receive the necessary psychosocial help, and then they would go back to the same situation. And we found that it didn't help women very much, especially those that were in really bad situations, and or in violent situations or violent relationships. And we found that they needed to be taken out of that situation for a short period of time to help them to recover and gain, their self-confidence and self-worth and all the rest of it, before they could, go back to that home and, gain the respect of either their spouses or whether it's other family members, even their own children. So that's, it was, we got the ulema on board, we got business people on board, we invited them one evening to this property that we had identified, and it was, we were like on tenterhooks. We don't know how the community would receive it. Because, the elders would always say that no, within the confines of the home, things can be sorted out and things can be resolved. And here now you are encouraging, and you're creating a space where you're going to be telling women to come, leave your home, come out here to us, and we're going to help. But we had we had all the people that we invited, the business and the women, on board. They came on board and they promoted the center and they provided, the funding. And it was really amazing that, the kind of support that we got for the center. And alhamdulillah, it was established through the hard work of many of the volunteers who came forward. Collecting funds for a project like this was, a little difficult, but, it came together.
So the center is now in existence for 12 years?
Yes.
And Sabira, would you say that your center is specifically for women only, or are males, children, are these individuals welcome at your center as well?
Well, presently the live-in facility is for women and their children, the young children that come with the mothers. But we do family interventions, we do family therapy, and this is where we encourage, a husband who is willing to come forward for counseling for purposes of reconciliation. If there is that interest and he shows that he is willing, then we have, the family therapy groups, and we invite the whole, the members of the family, and they come in, and we have, sessions we plan like 8 sessions before we can say for sure that there's some changes that have taken place. So yes, some men, of course, are not willing to come on board. But maybe I'll tell you a little bit more about, what happens in those cases.
So if a woman comes to you and she's been exposed to domestic abuse or violence, and what do you offer this individual if she stays with you for a week? In that week, what does your respite center offer her to make her stronger and confident to be able to go back to her home?
Okay, so when they come to us, we do an assessment first of all to see by a professional person, either a social worker or myself. We do an assessment to see what are the needs of this woman. What type of abuse is she, actually experiencing? Whether it's physical, whether it's emotional, whether it's sexual, whether it's verbal or mental abuse. Because all those different types of abuse can be very traumatizing for a person. So we establish what type of, and what are the immediate dangers that she is in. Whether it's, sometimes the danger is where husband carries a gun, or, he's very violent and he's previously, really hit her badly. So once that assessment is done, then we also take into account what does the woman want. She needs to tell us her story. She needs to explain, what she's feeling at that time. So we can assess the type of assistance she would need, whether she just needs a few days in order to, give her some time and create a safe space. Then, she would open up, which normally happens. Usually, we need to build a trusting relationship with them. They need to feel confident that this person is going to help me and is willing to help me and not just abuse me further. Right? So we have that first at when they come in, we do that assessment, and thereafter we offer them what type of services we have there at the center, and we give them the option to choose okay, you can stay in, and we will, provide the counseling on a daily basis initially, and then it will be once a week, and then, where you are ready. If you need any type of skills development, you need any type of psychological services, would also include assessing whether the person is severely depressed. So we wouldn't provide the medication, we would then refer either to a private doctor who has volunteered his services to us, a psychiatrist. So we would refer to him, we would make an appointment, or we would to a state hospital where we have developed a relationship with them, and we send them with a letter to say, can you please do an assessment on the nature of the illness this person is experiencing. So those are the things that we would offer them. Yeah. So we put like a few options to them. So it doesn't, because now if we are going to force them into something, it would mean we further abusing them. We are making them do things that they are not willing to do, they are not happy about. So, and when they realize that, yes, now here this person is, for once somebody is asking me what do I want, it makes a big difference. They begin to trust you, and slowly they will open up, and as the counseling sessions go, they would actually reveal the truth of their trauma and how far back they've been experiencing it. And then we can do the sessions of healing and developing.
So we'll take a quick ad break, and after the ad break we'll chat more to Sabira Tamal with regards to her respite center and how it could help women in and around Durban. Welcome back to Margin and Modest, and with me we have Sabira Tamal from a respite center based here in Durban. So Sabira, we were just touching on what you offer to these ladies and what your respite center can do for them in order for them to feel confident and open up regarding the issues. But over and above women coming through to the respite center, are there any other programs that you're involved with? Maybe, for the masses out there, not everyone can perhaps come through to you.
Yes, we do community programs, we do outreach programs where, we go out to schools, to young people, talk to them about domestic violence. Because you remember, when a child comes from a home that it has been experiencing domestic violence, the child undergoes secondary abuse because they are present, they are listening to the violence that's going on, whether it's verbal, whether it's physical, and it will affect them later in life or while they are studying, when they reach the teenage years, which are, like we always say, those are very challenging years for young people. So, the target groups would be the younger people, so, so that they can come forward, they can understand, why domestic violence happens, and how can they, bring about some changes within the home, that also they don't blame themselves for what's happening in the home, because a lot of young people do blame themselves. Also parents then would, they play that tug of war game with the children. They say the father would, want the children on his side, the mother would then display a kind of behavior where she wants sympathy for the children. And they become torn between, the two parents, not wanting to disappoint either. So these kinds of programs do help the young people to get a better understanding, and also to seek help, to go and talk to somebody, to talk about what's happening. Because remember, domestic violence is a topic or a subject which is usually swept under the carpet. It happens in most homes and in some form or the other. But nobody wants to come out in the open and say, well, this is happening in my family, or my husband is treating me that way, or my wife is so abusive. So I think the awareness programs just the people can identify, okay, I'm experiencing, this form of abuse. My spouse is making me feel like I'm no good, or, publicly or in front of friends, always calling me names and, things like that. So they begin to understand what is happening in their lives. So awareness programs, yes, are very important.
I'm just going to touch on what you mentioned now, which was interesting, that you go out to schools and you chat to teenagers and children about domestic violence. Just in your experience, do you find that kids that grow up in that environment where they have to, unfortunately, witness everything that goes on in the home, when they grow into adults, do you find that they become those individuals later in life because they've grown up in that environment?
Yes, they do, because some of the cases that we get, that we have at the center, when we go back a little bit in history, either the wife or the husband tells us, or either spouse will tell us, yes, well, my parents used to do the same thing, and what's so terrible about my behaving this way. I mean, that's the norm, you see. So they begin to learn that type of behavior, and the manner in which they treat other people, the manner in which they communicate. They learn all that. Children learn it. They're not born with those instincts. They actually learn.
Learned behavior.
Yeah. So if they the type of language that's used in the home, with lots of obscene language, the children will learn the same thing. And we find that when a lot of the children, when they are teenagers, if it's the mother that's experiencing that type of abuse, then they would also treat her in that way. That's where we pick up that children do learn, they do carry it in their lives, and they, would then practice it. That's, they feel that that's the norm, that's the way they should behave.
Unacceptable.
Yes. So we had a mother recently who came and very broken, and she says, can you imagine my 13-year-old son, swearing me when he wants something, he wants breakfast, he won't just ask me in a nice way. If he finds that he comes home from school and the meal that I've cooked is not good, like, throwing the plate around or saying this is not what I want and banging on the table. And, this is where she came very broken, because she says, I didn't expect this of my
I guess it's more painful
children.
when it comes
Absolutely,
from
yeah. She says, I could accept the abuse that was happening, from my spouse, but now that my children are treating me this way, I feel I need to get out of here, and I need to seek help, and I need to find how can I help my children to become better people and better human beings. So yes, they do carry it through to adulthood, and because they feel it's normal behavior.
It's acceptable.
Yeah, it's acceptable.
So Sabira, tell me, with we find that with women that stay in these homes, do you find that they have to sort of accept that kind of abuse because they are financially dependent? Do you find that being a scenario, I don't know, most of the time? Is it because our women are not perhaps developed in a certain way or confident enough to gain independence?
Absolutely. This happens very often, where women will not come out, especially when in the early years, where children are young, and they've in the first, let's say, in the first about 8 years of their marriages, when they've had their children, the children are still in grade 1, grade 2, but when the children are grown a little, and she has more time to reflect on herself, and she asks herself, who am I? Okay, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a daughter-in-law, but who am I as a person, as a human being? And that's where, she begins to feel, I've lost my instincts for wanting to do things that I want to do. What did I like in my teenage years? What hobbies did I have, before I married? Or what were my passion? and she begins to question herself.
I guess you're so preoccupied from the time you married up until that 8-9 years when your kids become sort of independent of you.
Absolutely. So you become so involved with the young children and pleasing your husband and being the best wife that you can, that you do not give yourself that time. When the children are a little bit more independent and they want to do things on their own, and husband is very involved in the business and you very much on your own now, and you begin
when your loneliness starts setting
then in. Either depression sets in or other psychosomatic conditions like severe headaches or severe back pain, or and they're constantly going to the doctor, and the doctor saying, but really there's nothing wrong with you. But little do they find out what is the background, what environment do they come from, where is this all stemming from, type of thing. And women then begin to realize that, then over a radio program or 16 days of activism, when, we are out there on the street marching and, making people know, then, they pick up on the pamphlets and they will phone and they will call, or they'll walk in and say, I need help.
So are there any skills development that you offer to these individuals that feel they want to do more with themselves?
You see, from the assessment, we can actually find out whether they are financially independent, whether they are some. We also get professional women who do have a job, who are employed and who are earning a salary, but still, because of the violence, they just are not feeling, human actually. So once we find that here the person is completely financially dependent on the spouse, because either they have very little education, they haven't developed on their skills. So we then introduce them to various ideas. What is it that you have a passion for? Do you have a passion for sewing, for craft, things you can make and sell in the flea market, things you can bake, or cooking? Today, the young professional woman wants somebody to, cook, a food which she can take away home. So, we also try and do skills which are market related. It's no use teaching them something where it's not going to be financially viable. So, and the person must have that passion. They must have an interest. You can't force somebody to do sewing when they have absolutely no skill for sewing.
So Sabira, with all the development that you offer and the support, can you share maybe some success stories with our viewers? What have you come across thus far?
Yes, there are a number of success stories, and where we do get people coming back to us and telling us how well they're doing, especially with their home industry, where they have started a little baking industry, where they are selling it out, and that builds their confidence and they feel happier within themselves. We've done reconciliation. That's where the husband and wife begin to understand that it's the lack of communication, the kind of way in which you communicate with each other. We develop those skills. The name calling, all that needs to stop. People need to see each other. So we had lots of family unification, where husband and wife have gone back together and living a happy life with their children and appreciating each other. And it just took a little bit of help, a little bit of counseling, a little bit of understanding, and of course, the coaxing, to bring the other partner on board, because initially it's like, oh no, I'm not at fault. It's she or he that's, very defensive. So they begin to see themselves in the marriage, and Alhamdulillah, we've had great success with that. And we also encourage the type when the children are young, when they need both parents. Where children are gone out of the home and they, on their own, they've got their own profession, and if the spouses are not getting on, then we would encourage separation, or we would say, okay, the time.
So Sabira, just before we wrap up our show, is there a message that you'd like to share with our female viewers today?
Yes, female viewers and families, that there is help out there. They come forward and talk to somebody about, what you are experiencing in your life. Don't allow yourself and your children to remain in a violent environment. There's enough violence going out in the world, but we want them to grow into healthy, stable human beings. So yes, come forward. My advice is just seek help. Don't feel that it's below your dignity. Don't feel that I'm too wealthy or I'm too I don't need help. But you do. When things are not going well within your family, with your wife, with your children, please come forward and take that help that's out there. A lot of people have a lot of pride and they feel no, it's below my dignity and I'm not going to something is wrong with the other person. The blaming goes on. But please, families, if you want a good South Africa, you want to create a good society, a good ummah, then come forward, resolve your family issues, because that's where life stems from, the family, the most important social unit.
Well, alhamdulillah, thank you for that advice today. And indeed, Allah has definitely blessed certain individuals with a giving personality like yourself. Okay, so that was Sabira Tamal, a community, I would say a community worker, always happy to give off whatever she can. And that was Modern and Modest with Sabira Tamal. After our ad break, we'd be meeting another interesting guest. Assalamu alaikum, Zahida, and welcome to Modern and Modest. Before we actually get into body talk and psychology and life coach, maybe you can share with our viewers as to who Zahida Mohammadi is and what you're all about.
Wa alaikum salam, Noshina. Thank you so much for having me. So, Zahida Mohammadi is a body talk practitioner, a life coach, and a mother of two. I have been through quite a few struggles in my own life. So a lot of the topics that I speak about, whether it's health issue struggles, I've been through a chronic illness, trauma, anxiety, all of those things, parenting issues, relationship struggles. These are all things challenges that I've been through in my own life. And so through my struggle, I found these different modalities that made me want to really share that with other people and help them with similar struggles, because I do believe that any of the challenges that we're faced with are really there to help us to grow and evolve. So I often use the tagline, turning pain into power, because I truly believe that pain can sometimes be there to help us grow and help us go further.
Well, my second question to you was, you drawn to self-development and why, but you've pretty much just answered. I mean, it's all your own life experiences that got you to do what you do and getting more involved with being a life coach. So, Zahida, can you maybe just touch on the difference between a psychologist and a life coach? I mean, to me they seem the same, but you can maybe answer that for us.
And I think that a lot of people share that sentiment where they're not sure what's the difference between them, and I can see why, because it all kind of seems like the same thing. There are differences. I've studied both, okay, and I feel like psychology is really nice for that awareness, and I think every modality has its place and has a space, and everyone's coming from a place of wanting to help and wanting to assist in growth. It's very good for the awareness and to make that link, because very often you make that link, okay, right now I'm having an issue, I'm having a struggle maybe in my marriage or maybe in my parenting or whatever else it may be. And then you start to draw the links and you start to connect the dots, that it might be because, you know, I faced this kind of struggle when I was growing up, or there was this kind of dynamic, or maybe I have that kind of trauma. And so it's great for the awareness. What I love with the modalities of life coaching, body talk, NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, which we also I use as a modality as well, is that as much as it's nice to have awareness of where the issue is coming from, it's also about going a bit deeper and going, okay, now what do we do about it? How do we actually repair? How do we actually heal from that? So these are modalities that work within the realm of what we call the subconscious mind. So the conscious mind, we can chat about it, we can dissect it, we can analyze it, all good and well. But the coping mechanisms, the patterns, the belief systems, the fears that were created because of that dynamic, that is what we work with within the subconscious mind, using modalities like body talk, life coaching, NLP.
So in a nutshell, psychology would be more to sort of understand the issue and help you to surface it, and your life coach and body talk would be what the repair work, trying to fix those issues. So would you say that it obviously seems like a package? Would you say that an individual should first attempt to see a psychologist and then be referred to a life coach, or not necessarily?
So it really depends on the individual and where they are in their journey. Although psychologists, I know they do use cognitive behavioral therapy. You have different types of modalities in that which can be very effective. What I would say is that what I love about the work that I do is that it's very integrative. So I've worked with clients who've been to psychologists, and we kind of just further the process and go deeper. And I've worked with people who've never been to any kind of therapist or counselor before, and we're able to work very effectively. So I would say, as an individual, if the viewers out there are thinking about how to address an issue, go with where you're feeling drawn to. Go with what you're feeling pulled towards. We live in a beautiful time where there's so much awareness about things, and people are stepping out, and people are not hiding behind that mask of perfection any longer. There's a lot of pressure in our world on women to look a certain way and be a certain way and be a certain mother and wife and daughter-in-law and all of these different things, and it becomes overwhelming. So you need to look at where you're being drawn to, because everything can be integrative. But for me personally, I love the modalities that I work with because I see the results. I see the results in my own life. I see the results in the lives of hundreds of clients that I've worked with. So, yeah.
Okay. So would you say people, like you've mentioned now, people are starting to talk about it? They looking for the help and the assistance. Do you find that people are becoming more accepting of, I have a problem and I need to deal with it?
Yes and no. Yes and no, Noshina. It's a tricky one. Yes, I think it has given people the space now to start being more honest with themselves. And I find very often when somebody first comes to see me that initially they have so much shame and they have so much judgment, and they think, oh, what's wrong with me, and why can't I get it together, and everyone else seems to be doing okay. And after some time of working together, they turn around and they realize that this was the best thing that ever happened to them, because this gave them an avenue to go deep within themselves and pull out those beautiful gifts that they have and help them to get more in touch with who they are. So initially it's a problem solving kind of issue, but as the journey unfolds, it's really a process of, oh my gosh, I'm so happy that I got to refine these parts of myself, reconnect with these parts of myself, and that allows me to connect with my partner better and with my children better, and helps me to just shift the perspective of how I see the world. On the other hand, you do have people who haven't done any self-development work and really look down on this. I remember once, I'm going to be very candid, I put up a post on about perfectionism, and how perfectionism really, I said striving for excellence is a really good quality to have, but striving for perfectionism leads to a lot of anxiety. And when we know in our deen, it's part of our deen is to strive for excellence and do the best that you can, but without attachment. You do the best that you can, and then you let go of the outcome, because you know that is in Allah's hands. There's only so much free will that we have. And in today's society, we get very caught up in that it has to be a certain way. You do your best, but then you don't let go. And what happened was, I put this up on Instagram, and a follower came forward, and he was very critical of it, and he said, well, perfectionism is a very good thing to strive for, and how can you say it causes anxiety? And people, these days there's anxiety everywhere you turn. I think it's just a thing that's come about because of social media. And I had to address it, and there's a lot of shaming around people who come forward and say that they have anxiety and they say have these other things. But I found in my line of work, every person has some kind of issue. And that's really what Allah has given us as a test. We can either deny that and pretend like everything is okay, or we can face up to it and learn the lessons that He wants for us to learn.
So I'm glad you mentioned social media. You've stepped out and you've gone on these platforms just to, I suppose, introduce being a life coach or more about body talk. What type of response, apart from what you've just mentioned, would you say that you've had more positive as opposed to negative? What type of response did you get from social media?
Alhamdulillah, I'm quite fortunate. This is about 1% of the responses. Most of them are very positive. People can relate. There's, like I said, we live in a time where it's all about the perfect selfie, and I went to this party and I went to that event, and that's wonderful. That's awesome, enjoy that. But behind closed doors, there's a lot of issues. All of us, every one of us is struggling with something in our personal lives. And I just wanted to be able to have a platform where people could share and grow and learn that beyond the traditional methods of how to deal with your issues, there's so many avenues. You know, not very long ago, I'm talking about like maybe 20 years ago, going to a psychologist meant that you were mad. I remember, even still in our society, if you say go to a psychologist, I'm not mad, I don't need to go. You know, there's the stigma attached to it. But if you can see it from the perspective that it's not about, you know, navel gazing and feeling sorry for yourself and talking endlessly about your problems, going to a life coach or body talk practitioner, doing any kind of self-development work is really about saying, I'm going to be very responsible and show up in my life. And instead of being a victim, I'm going to take my problems and deconstruct them, take my challenges, and I'm going to find a way to grow and evolve from them. So that was really my intention and purpose of going online.
And how long have you been a life coach or a body practitioner for?
So I've been working full-time in my business since 2014.
All right, so coming back to psychology and being a life coach, you being a mum to two, and people come through to you and they share these issues with you. How do you cope? I mean, surely it must take a lot on your shoulders.
I get that question a lot. You know, it is a lot. It is a lot to juggle. But I think the one thing that has helped me a lot, Noshina, is I have realistic expectations of myself. I call myself a recovering perfectionist.
Okay.
Because I have always been a perfectionist since I was a teenager. And when I became a mom, I was diagnosed with a chronic illness. During my first pregnancy, I was diagnosed with a chronic illness that they said was incurable. And I realized, at first we didn't know what to do, and then I realized as I went along that a lot of my illness came from anxiety, and my anxiety came from the perfectionism. So I call myself a recovering perfectionism because whenever I can see myself slipping into that, I know I need to pull back. So what helps me in juggling it all is that I don't try to be perfect, because I can't. And whatever, you know, I can't always be on top of messages. I can't always be on top of emails. I really do try my best. I strive for excellence, but I know that I'm never going to get it all together all the time. And that's okay for me. So sometimes I will go and, you know, when there's a bake sale, I will buy the cake without shame. You know, I can either wind myself up in knots and be this perfectionist and this people pleaser and be the stressed out mother that's, you know, irritated with her children, or I can choose where I want to put my efforts and energy and how much I let that get to me.
Okay, I like what you just said, being the stressed out mother because you feel that you're perhaps not good enough, like I need to bake the cake as opposed to buying the cake. Okay, we'll take a quick ad break, and after the ad break, Saida, we'd like to talk a little bit more about anxiety and motherhood. I think that's a big one for all of us, and our viewers can sort of agree, understand, we're all mums and we've all been through it. So I think that would be very interesting to discuss. Hey, welcome back to Modern and Modest, and if you've missed it, if you've missed the earlier segment with us today, we have Zahida Mohammadi, a life coach and a body talk practitioner. So Zahida, just picking up from where we left off, I think this would be my favorite discussion. Motherhood and mums being so hard on ourselves must lead to anxiety. So can you tell us more about just motherhood, mums? Why is it that we feel we have to be perfect at everything we do, and is this beneficial to our kids or not?
That's such a good question. I'm so glad you brought it up because it's one that's so close to my heart. I think let's start off with the positive intent. I think all of us mothers, regardless of where we come from, we just want to do right by our children. We just want to give them the best. We just want to make sure that at the end of the day, we've given them the best of ourselves, we've given them the best opportunities because we love them and we want them to succeed. But at the same time, I think sometimes in wanting to do that, we lose sight of the importance of us being in a grounded space. Because as much as our children, we think that they're going to remember a fancy party or they're going to remember this, that and the other, they remember far more the smiles and the laughs and us being in a happy space and in an easy space. I often in my practice get mums wanting to bring their kids to me. And I tell them that most of the time I probably will have to work with you, because the child will mirror your issues, and the child will very clearly show what is going on in the environment. I know when I first became a mother, my perfectionism started working against me. My anxiety started working against me. And I made a decision that I'm going to be an imperfect mother, because my child didn't need a perfect mother. My child needed a happy, grounded mother. And so those are things. So in every situation, I really ask myself, okay, whatever I'm doing, is this bigger? And if this the most important thing for my child's happiness? And how much of a toll is it going to take on me? If it's going to put me in a space where I'm ratty and irritable and snapping at the child and feeling resentful, why do I have to do this for you? Then is that really what my child needs from me? So if I have to scale it back a little bit and not do it perfectly and be happy and centered around my child and be able to talk and laugh with them, then I'm going to choose that option. And a very important thing, Noshina, is I know there will be mothers out there that might judge me for that. And we mothers are very harsh on ourselves, and we're very harsh on each other. There's a lot of judgment that goes on. How can you not bake the cake for the child? How can I do everything perfectly? You know, there's a lot of that. And this perfectionism is something that people aspire to, except we have to ask ourselves, it's taking how much of a toll is it taking on your emotional well-being, and how much of a toll is that then taking on your physical well-being, and what is happening to your child in the process? Because if I see an anxious child in my practice, no child is born anxious. They learn that anxiety from us. So what are we modeling for them? You know, what are we showing them about life and how they need to approach things? So how do we then get that balance between teaching them how to strive for excellence, which is part of our sunnah, and then detaching from the outcome, part of our faith, versus that perfectionism that we all get caught up in?
You mentioned now with mums, like maybe mentioning, why can't you bake the cake, or I've baked the cake. Do you find that when you're planning a birthday party for your kid, does this have an impact on your child?
So our children emulate us. If you think about it, they actually shine a mirror to what's going on with us. Our children mirror what's going on with us. So there's a whole branch of psychology called conscious parenting. There's Dr. Shafali Sabri. She's worked with Oprah. She's been on Oprah's show and so on. And she speaks a lot about this, about how our children mirror us. And I found this to be very true in my own parenting as well as in my clients' lives. So if you're finding your children are getting caught in this comparison and this competitiveness, ask yourself, well, where am I showing that to them? Am I getting caught in it? And sometimes, you know, it's not even, sometimes we think, well, I'm not trying to get exactly the car that person's having or the house that person's having, but we get caught up, you know, if she had that kind of function, then I have to have it a certain way. Nothing wrong with aspiring for excellence, but where are you getting caught up in comparison and competitiveness? Your children are watching you, they're role modeling you, you are providing the environment from which they start to create filters for their life. So that's what I would say to that question. See where that's showing up in your own life.
Okay, so just coming back to body talk, being a body talk practitioner, how would body talk apply to situations like these?
So body talk is a healthcare modality, right? It's not alternative, it's complementary, which means it's very integrative. So I often see people who are already on medication, some people who haven't been on medication, there's a mix, right? So body talk works on the underlying issues of where imbalance is being created in the body-mind. It comes from the premise that everything is interconnected. Your body is an ecosystem. So physical, emotional, mental, energetic, they are all linked. So although you might be having a symptom that's showing up physically, for me it was that chronic illness, there's something going on emotionally and energetically. There's certain behavioral patterns, there's certain filters of perception in terms of how you see the world, your responses, your thinking patterns, your belief system, that have all created imbalance within your body-mind that may or may not now manifest in either physical symptoms or emotional imbalances or even relationship issues. So we always look at what is the challenge in your life right now. Like for instance, if your child is comparing all of these things, or you are finding parenting difficult, well, what is going on within me that makes this so difficult? And so it's a very empowering modality, because more often than not, when someone first comes to see me, they feel like the other person is the problem. And we all get caught up in this, right? We all start off with thinking, well, they are the problem and they need to change, whether it's my spouse or my, my close family or my friend or my child. We think they need to change, they have the problem. And yes, everybody has their points of growth, but Body Talk is about, and life coaching is really about focusing on, okay, well, if I'm experiencing this in this way, maybe I need to shift and grow. Maybe I need to change my perception. Maybe I need to shift my belief systems so that I can start responding differently, because everybody responds to the energy that you bring. So it's a very, for me, Body Talk is a very empowering modality, because it says, well, if I'm not happy with an experience in my life, I need to shift and grow in some way.
Do you find that this type of modality is growing within our community?
I think it is. I think it is, because I think the first draw card that it has is everybody loves that it's a complementary therapy, and that people find sometimes, their ailments are, if not completely gone, they are alleviated. Their symptoms are alleviated via the Body Talk. And I love the fact, and I think they love the fact, that they're able to deal with their day-to-day challenges in a more constructive way. Whereas before, it's just make sabar,
Yes.
which we misconstrue, because sabar is not just about sitting and festering and sitting in resentment, which we in the past thought that it was. Sabar is about saying, okay, I've been given this test, how do I move through it? At the same time, having complete faith and trust that Allah is guiding me to something better. So I think they love, the awareness is growing, and there's it's growing in popularity, because people have found it a tool that really helps them in their day-to-day struggles.
I like what you just said now, very common amongst our community, where people would ask you to make sabr. But at some point, okay, you'd make sabr for that time. But at some point, wouldn't you get that relapse coming through to you because you haven't dealt with it at the time?
100%. So that's where I say I feel like making sabr has been misconstrued in our community a little bit. So making sabr is not just sitting tight with the resentment and obviously sometimes in the short term somebody says something, you're like, you know what, just let it go, don't let it affect you. But if somebody's saying that something all the time and it keeps on affecting you, then you need to delve within and say, okay, what are they triggering within me? Why is it so easy for this person to press my buttons? Why do I have these buttons? Is there anything that I can do to remove these buttons so that, because I know I can't change their behavior, you can't change even if you approach them, that's not going to work most of the time. But what can I shift within me so I'm not so easily triggered by this individual or this situation?
I think it's just teaching you on how to receive that individual.
And for me, that's very much part of my faith. It's about saying, not sitting as a victim and going, oh Allah, why are you doing, putting this in my life? It's about saying, Ya Allah, you've put this in my life, so help me to work through it in such a way that I come out a better person.
Okay. So with Body Talk, is it more a one-on-one, or do you offer group sessions? Maybe a few, we all tend to have same or similar issues, So do you offer group sessions, or is it just one-on-one?
So I do a lot of one-on-one, which I've now moved into a very intensive way of working, where I combine the different modalities and we go in quite deeply. But yes, you can actually work in a group environment, which is something that's going to be coming through more and more. And even in my online platforms, we're going to be releasing a lot more things that you can do as self-study, because I think there's a certain amount of shifting you need to do within a practitioner environment. But sometimes even your practitioner may not have the time to sit and explain to you the building blocks of where this comes from and how it works and how to move past it, and the suggestions of how you can move forward in that challenge. And so that's where a lot of the online platform advice is going to come through.
So Zahida, we know that you're an individual that's very drawn to self-development. However, we do find that for most people that have reached wealth or success in a monetary term feel that they have achieved now and they self-developed. Is this usually the case? Maybe you can share with our viewers, what is self-development? Do I necessarily have to be right at the top as far as monetary value goes, or can you still be very well developed and yet not be the wealthiest person around?
What a lovely question. Okay, so self-development and success or achievement in terms of money are two different things. First of all, what I find is the more self-developed you become, it's actually easier for you to create success and create monetary gains. It just kind of flows like that. However, they're two very, very different things. Self-development is about doing the inner work of becoming an emotionally aware and emotionally intelligent person. It's someone who is able to respond to change and challenges in a positive, constructive way. Someone who's able to deal with the issues in their life, deal with their relationships in a very constructive way. For me, it's a person who's grounded and authentic in themselves and a real person. part of that, yes, you could end up being very wealthy because of that, because you're a grounded person and opportunities kind of flow from that. But having wealth does not necessarily equate you to being self-developed. I know, and I'm sure you do, many wealthy people who are very far from being authentic and very far from being grounded in themselves. Maybe they're very stressed out by their success. They're anxious about it. So they're two very different things.
Okay. So with all the work that you do, what inspires you to just keep going at what you do?
I would say the major things that inspire me are, number one, my children. And it sounds like a cliche one, but really I got into this work in order to be a better mother to my children, because I realized that the coping mechanisms that I had developed over time were not going to stand in their favor, that I needed to shift in myself so that I could bring a more grounded, present mother to them. The second thing that inspires me is definitely my clients, and definitely people that I get to touch their lives, whether it be in person in my practice or whether it be online on social media. They really inspire me when I see them starting to see changes in their lives and seeing positive transformation.
Okay, and some words of motivation for our viewers.
I share a lot of valuable information on self-development on my online platform, Live Inspired. And living from an inspired place for me, means living from a heart-based space. It means living in line with who you authentically are. So you drop the masks of perfection and you start living as who you are. And as you do that, you're able to connect more deeply with those around you. You're able to connect more deeply with yourself and just experience a life that is more fulfilling overall. So if you found today's information helpful, feel free to go online onto my Instagram, which is Live Inspired ZA, or onto my YouTube channel, Zaida Mohammadi, and you can get a lot more information there that hopefully will be of benefit to you.
Well, alhamdulillah, that was a powerful episode by two of our very inspiring guests today. So, you can definitely turn that pain into power by just being yourself. Same time next week with myself, Noshina Ghani, on Modern and Modest.